Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here and welcome to my review of the 1947 classic film Black Narcissus, which I believe is directed by the same people who did The Red Shoes, which I reviewed back in autumn 2018 as part of an Introduction to Film, Introduction to Film Studies module for my university course. With this film, this is not part of a university course, though I can reveal that I will be watching quite a few films soon that will be part of a course for university. I might talk more about this at the end. But in the case of this film, I watched this because I recently checked out the BBC television miniseries, also based on the same book that this film is based on, Black Narcissus. That's currently up on my main channel. 3 reviews, 1 for each episode, and a mini ranking. Now, I did like that mini-series, but I felt there was quite a bit of issues with it. And I think that this film improves on some aspects of that, but on the other hand, that series also does some stuff better than this film, and both kind of work and not work in certain elements. And in all honesty, I'm not a big fan of this film. Maybe I'm just not a huge fan of this story, but I think there is a generally brilliant story in there, but neither adaptation has really tapped into the best version of it. And, well, maybe the book, I suppose, but I'm not sure. I haven't read the book, and I haven't really found an awful lot of information about it, because most of the information is about this film, or the miniseries. So what's the plot of Black Narcissus? Well, 5 nuns go up to this abandoned temple that in the Himalayas, that an Indian general is giving to them to turn into a monastery and a school. Previously, a group of monks were unsuccessful in doing a similar thing, so now the general is hoping that the nuns will be able to succeed where the monks failed. The nuns are led by the Sister Superior, Sister Claudu. I'll just call it the Sister Superior, played by Deborah Kerr, who I previously seen. I think I've only seen her in one thing prior to this film, in the Casino Royale spoof in 1967, which she was one of the best things of, I think, when she was Agent Mimi, posing as Mac Tarry's wife in the earlier scenes in that film, and in one bit towards the end. But yeah, that's the only other thing I've seen Deborah Kerr in. So Deborah Kerr's character and the other 5 nuns then set about turning this this temple into a monastery and a school, with help from the general's advisor, Mr. Dean, who in this version is British, but in the miniseries is American. One of the sisters, Sister Ruth, is unwell. She was unwell when they at the original monastery or nunnery, and she's unwell here, and throughout the course of their stay here, she gets further unwell. She gets more unwell, so much so that the last third of the film shows her going mad, going pretty insane, and eventually going against the order of the nunnery, the nuns' order, etc., and eventually trying to take matters into her own hand, try to get away, as well as also develop a jealousy between Sister Claudu and Mr. Dean, who, as much as they try not to, may or may not have their secret feelings for each other. And Sister Ruth is a bit jealous of that, and she wants to get away. She also thinks that Sister Claudu is secretly out to get rid of her, so to speak, and that she and the other nuns don't like Sister Ruth. That's what Sister Ruth thinks. So that's more or less the story of Black Narcissus. Oh, and if you've seen my miniseries and you're wondering where's the ghost, the spirit, etc., well, in this version there is no spirit. There's the feeling that everybody gets when up there, that it's just it's a mysterious place, and it doesn't quite feel right. Has absolutely nothing to do with anything spiritual or ghostly or anything. It's just high up in the mountains and mostly abandoned. So that's the reason why people seem to be scared of it. Things don't feel right, and when people go mad. Now, at first I did think that does sound like a bit of a silly reason for doing so, but one of my um, alternative suggestions for to the ghost thing in the miniseries, because I felt it was underplayed for the most part, apart from when Sister Ruth went mad. But even then, that wasn't really tied in with the whole spiritual stuff. So one of my suggestions was maybe it could just they go to the monastery. It's quite high up, it's quite remote, they feel alone, and Sister Ruth decides it's not for her, she wants out, and she's also unwell, so she goes mad. Technically, that's what this film sort of does, but I don't know, it doesn't quite feel how I think it could have gone. Maybe because it already has the sense of a mysterious, uneasy place already before they even get there. Then maybe that's what's letting it down for me. Maybe my suggestion doesn't quite work in this film's context because they're already saying that things already feel uneasy as opposed of it letting it become uneasy over time. It's already got the reputation of being uneasy. Um, that being said, I think the characters, apart from Sister Ruth, do persevere more in this climax than they did in the original, in the miniseries. I think they managed to persevere a bit more, and they do a few more stuff. There's a couple of stuff that's similar to the miniseries, so I'm guessing this is mostly similar to the book. So I guess the whole uneasy feeling that's already there, uneasy feeling whilst they're there, being a bit lonely, etc., and Sister Ruth eventually finding it's not for her and eventually trying to leave at her own accord. I guess that's kind of what we do get. But I think perhaps having it got that reputation may have dampened that or at least the execution of the idea might have dampened it. That's why I'm just not satisfied, one or the other. Now, as this film was made in 1947, or at least came out in 1947, there's a few racial liberties. I say liberties as I mean stereotypes and what we would consider today to be yellow facing or dodgy casting choices, because there's one genuine Indian actor who plays the young general. Besides that, the Indian casts are played by white people in makeup or with costumes. The biggest change for me between this film and the miniseries, besides anything to do with the supernatural, the biggest change that hasn't got anything to do with the supernatural is the portrayal of the Indian caretaker woman at the temple. In the miniseries, she was and a more stern and strict and slightly depressed, I suppose, or worried older woman. She had some knowledge about what had happened before and some feeling about the supernatural stuff that took place in that mini series. In this film, take out the supernatural stuff. That's okay, fine. You can still have the strict and worrisome older woman, but what we get in the film is comic relief. The old woman in the film is comic relief and such an obvious stereotype. I know it's 1947, but it feels uncomfortable. They've tried to make her look slightly ugly. I suppose they tried to make her slightly ugly and to put to some rakish type clothing or maybe not ragish, but certainly it looks quite weird, and the rotted teeth, and the actress performs her like it's a joke. She's playing it like a joke. I think the version in the miniseries is better, even without the supernatural stuff. She was still a kind of morbid but stern character. Here, she's just comic relief for the sake of it, and that's not even bringing the fact that she's played by a white woman when she's supposed to be Indian. That's the cherry on the top of this. Oh gosh! And alongside that, in those who saw my miniseries, I mentioned in the third episode that there was a romance between the young general and a girl that Mr. Dean brought to the monastery. Well, Mr. Dean brings that girl here in the film as well, but she's a bit more of a troublesome character in the film, or at least that's what he says. This character does not talk, and she has only a few minutes on screen, but yet somehow all that time is just trying to imply that she's likes the general, the young general, and she's trying to get his attention, and they try to do a love story, and then they go and run off together, and then he comes back to apologize for running off and wants to continue his studies just as they're going. At the very end, so that character could be cut from this film. That the character could have been cut, and you would have lost nothing except where did the general go? The young general go? When everybody leaves the monastery, they could just have written the line. They could have rewritten the line to say he ran off with one of the girls easily. And similarly, the same issue with the with a mini and similar issue with the miniseries is the baby who gets ill. They say it's the brother of someone. I honestly can't. I don't know which character they're talking about when they say it's the younger brother of somebody, maybe one of the students, perhaps. But I don't think we ever got to you don't even meet that student. So I honestly don't know. I honestly don't know. So even so, if they kept the line as it was about the young general running off with the girl, they say, "Oh, he ran off with so and so," then it would just make as much sense as that. Um, the characters. Sister Claudio has some pretty good character growth and development over the film. We learn a bit more about her backstory here than in the miniseries, where that miniseries did a trope of some recent BBC drama series that I've seen. I haven't seen all of the BBC drama series over the last couple of years, but some of the ones I have seen sometimes have this trope of couple seconds or even a few milliseconds of flashback of past events of for the main character or for a character that don't really add up until towards the end. That's what the miniseries does with Sister Claudio's past, and it doesn't really fit, and she has to basically explain quite a lot of it in exposition towards the end, or part of it towards the end anyway. With this film, we actually get some proper flashback scenes of her in her past life before she joins the monastery. Although we only get half of that, and then the rest of it is exposition to Mr. Dean, but it's in a very good scene where they have a conversation, and that is probably the closest scene that I can tell where the two of them actually really care for each other. At the same time, Sister Ruth has begun her descent into madness, and she's over listening the conversation, and she's starting to get very jealous because she also likes Mr. Dean. Although their relationship development doesn't really get as much notice here, unlike the miniseries where there's a scene or two at least between them. There's a couple of moments where they talk to each other, not so much about their feelings, but they at least talk. Here, there's not really anything. She just likes him from a distance, and I would say that would be okay normally for a romantic attachment, but considering these are main characters, and this is it's a big part of the story, and Sister Ruth goes mad over it. I think we could have had at least one scene, maybe the bit at Christmas, where we could have had maybe them talking. Doesn't even have to be about their feelings. They could just be talking as friends. So I'll get back to that in a bit, but I think the stuff with Sister Claudio's past was really well handled in this film. Even if we only saw half of it on flashback scenes, the exposition was also done really well. And I think that's a big improvement over the new version, the mini-series, which was just a silly little second or millisecond long flashback scenes that are kind of a bit tropey with recent BBC dramas, or at least some of the ones I've seen. And then just whatever we don't get is filled in with exposition, whilst here it's 50-50. 50% is show not tell, the other 50% is tell, but in a really good scene. And speaking of showing, the best thing about this film is the visuals. Now, I do think there is a slight bit of how do I put it, stiff acting and directing in this film, but this might be due to this being more of how it was done in the 1940s, as opposed to most things I've seen post 1947. I think the direction and the acting in this film is slightly stiff compared to what I've seen in later. And I don't just mean from the 2000s, 2010s, 2020s. I mean from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s as well. The 1950s onwards, maybe even a couple of stuff from the 1930s and 40s. I've seen a bit less stiff acting from older films. This one's more, there's a little bit of a stiffness here, and especially earlier on, it does feel very stiff. And there's a couple of camera movements feel a bit stiff early on, but the visuals do look spectacular. They've done a fantastic job with giving us visual spectacle in places, especially with the locations and on the sets. It looks really good. There are a few questionable camera movements and edits in places, like when it cuts from one thing to another and it kind of holds on it and then we get on with it. There's a few of stuff like that, but for the most part, it is a visual spectacle and looks absolutely brilliant. The cinematographers and the directors did a really good job with the spectacle side, and as the film progresses, it gets more and more eased in with what it's doing. It's managed to find its feet. So most of the stiffness, I feel, must have come sooner in the production, because it definitely feels like it's finding its feet more and more as the film goes on, the production side. Acting wise, I think the acting is mostly great, especially from Deborah Kerr and the actor playing Mr. Dean. The actress playing Sister Ruth is outstanding. I think both actresses of Sister Ruth, from this film and from the miniseries, do outstanding jobs, and I think the character is really well done. I do think Sister Ruth is very, not very, but quite ignored for the first 50-55 minutes. There's a few mentions of her being unwell, being a bit absent, and being a bit of a shock when someone gets hurt. But it's only once we get to about 50 to 55 minutes is where we actually start getting some stuff about the character. And by that point, she's started to go mad, but we didn't really see much of that beforehand, whilst the miniseries actually does start to slowly but gradually show the character going into madness. Even if it's to do with supernatural elements, it's still building it up. And so when it reaches the halfway mark of the final episode, then it hits. It goes full drive, and I thought that was amazing. Even though it didn't really connect with the supernatural elements that well, I thought how it went down in execution was still marvellous. Here, we don't really get anything until after the halfway mark. It's an hour and 37 minutes, so it's about an hour and 8-9 minutes shorter than the miniseries as a whole. But even then, it still past the halfway mark before Sister Ruth actually starts going mad, and we start getting some character stuff about her besides the fact she's unwell. So I felt they were a bit late in the game with that, but the descent into madness does work, and the actress does a brilliant job with it. I will say the climax was building up to be exciting, tense. The music was building, the performances building it up. It was building up to be like a big climax, a big fight. And Sister Ruth does try to attack Sister Claudu, and then it's quickly stopped. It quickly ends with Sister Ruth falling off the cliff. And unlike in the miniseries, there's no doubt it was definitely an accident this time round. She definitely didn't mean to fall off the cliff. Whilst in the miniseries, it could be implied she did it on purpose, or it was an accident. But yeah, in this time round, the climax does feel like it's only half done. She attacks Sister Cloudy, hang onto the rope. They get back up, and then Sister Ruth only has part of her feet on the rock and accidentally falls down. That's the climax. That's it. It was building up to be big, and it stopped halfway. In the other version, they both get up. Sister Claudia hugs Sister Ruth because she's happy she's back. Because Sister Ruth went out for a bit. She's happy she's back, and then Ruth starts getting violent again, and she tries to attack Claudia, and then eventually she'll get to the cliff edge, and then has her accident, which might have been intentional, but like I said, that's theoretical. You can argue that, but this one, she just falls off the cliff after failing the first time round. There's not really much of a climax or a confrontation. It's just the first attack fails. Whoops, oh well. It's like they wanted to wrap it up quickly, but thankfully they don't just stop the film as soon as Claudio has finished reacting to Sister Ruth's death. They actually take a few minutes to wrap up the story, say goodbye, and then be on their way. They actually wrap up the story, as opposed to some older films I've seen, especially Hitchcock ones, where they will just stop. They will just stop the film as soon as where they feel the plot is finished. They don't take time to recover, they just stop. This actually has a few minutes to recover and catch our breath back after the half exciting climax. I say half exciting because it's half a climax and it was exciting and then it just stopped. So I guess the climax this time round stopped as opposed to the film when they felt they needed it. But I think the climax could have gone on for another couple of seconds where they could have had a bit more fight, or Ruth tried to attack Claudio. Claudio manages to escape death, and then Ruth falls off the cliff. But they don't really linger on it. They just first attack fails. Whoops, she's gone. As opposed to trying to have a bit more to it. This is the climax. And whilst the build up to the climax was very well done, I think the climax was only half well done, and then the other half was just swept to the side. And I find that very disappointing because of its great setup, as well as also the miniseries doing something pretty great with its climax and its climax's setup. But yet, it's kind of comes to a disappointing conclusion here, at least in terms of what we got. As for other elements in this story, the Cloudy Mr. Dean stuff is good. I don't know if it's. I don't think it's better than the miniseries one though. Because I think there's not as much time for them to actually develop their feelings. They're just like at each other's throats, and then they're okay with each other. The whole stuff of Mr. Dean being drunk at Christmas isn't as shown as well as in the miniseries. In the miniseries, we seem to be a bit more drunk, or at the very least, he's more. They say he's a bit more drunk, a bit more so there. Whilst here, he sings really loudly, and then afterwards, Sister Claudio says he's drunk, and he just then shouts as he is and admits it. But prior to that, the loud singing voice just sounded like it was a loud singing voice to me. It didn't sound like someone who was drunk. So yeah, and like I said, they didn't do a scene with Sister Ruth and Mr. Dean at Christmas, which I think could have helped develop their relationship, because there isn't really much of a relationship between them, and yet she goes to see him anyway. Maybe they're just friends like he is with the other nuns, but I feel like they could have done a bit more with that. There's not really much more I can say about this film other than it's good, despite a few racial questions, at least by 2021 standards. But still. And I do feel like some of the plot could have been improved in places. I think some of the bits that I've criticised did get improved on in the miniseries. Though they added these dumb, pointless supernatural element. And that could have worked, but they went very little with it. They didn't really go very far with it. So they should either have scrapped it or gone all the way, or at least gone a lot further than they did. This doesn't have any supernatural elements, which is fine. That's good. It actually makes this version better, because you don't get the horror genre trying to invade this religious drama, possibly romance, if it's considered a romance. I'm not sure. I think it's a religious drama, or at least a drama. So you don't get horror trying to invade this drama film, like in the miniseries. But that being said, I think it would have been a good addition to the miniseries if they went a bit further with it. And I think that's what helps this film be a unique version compared to the other one, because it just tries to be a religious drama. That's fine. But I think there was some stuff that did need to be improved on in this film, and I think that's where the miniseries did improve on. Underused horror angle aside, my guess is that the 47 film is a lot closer to the book, maybe minus a few character development moments, because you can do that with the book, whilst the film, I suppose it's for timing, so they didn't have as much, and then in the miniseries they can have a little bit of that, because it's 3 hours, or nearly 3 hours TV series. And one of my biggest criticisms of the television miniseries was that the character of Sister Blanche, or in the film Sister Honey, was very underdeveloped until halfway through the third episode. It's just as bad here. And actually, Sister Bryony gets almost as little to do as well, come to it. And she was a big part of the miniseries, and here she's doesn't really get much to do. Sister, what was the other one? Philippa gets a couple of moments in this film, and they don't have her leave halfway through and 2/3 through and replaced by someone else. She sticks around for the entire story, so that's good. I think there is a version of this story that could combine the best of both, like the really great character stuff and character growth and writing elements from the miniseries, but we lose the supernatural stuff and bring in some amazing visuals and the character backstory of Sister Claudio from this film. And there you go, you've got the best version of this story. It's kind of a combination of the two. But these are the only, as far as I'm aware, these are the only adaptations, at least film and TV adaptations of this story. I don't think it's a very well adapted story, so there might be a radio version out there, but um, as far as I'm aware, it's just these two, and I think both of them are a little unsatisfying in places. They both got some great bits to each other, and there's also got some questionable elements and some not so very good elements to them. So overall, I will be giving Black Narcissus, the film, a 7 out of 10. Yeah, although I did sound like I was giving it a positive review, it is a positive review, it's a 7, but the angles that I don't think it gets right, it really doesn't get right, or it kind of misses the mark, or it's a little underwhelming. And I feel a little bit, not too uncomfortable, but I kind of feel a little uncomfortable with the Indian stereotypes and the casting. I really think they let the old woman caretaker character down, like really let down with this version. And the girl that the young general falls in love with could be cut from this film, and you would lose absolutely nothing apart from where the general went after people stopped going to the monastery. But besides that, you could lose that character, the girlfriend character, and that wouldn't change a thing. Um, so yeah, and as spectacular as the visuals are, I did think there was a few stiff acting and direction points. Certainly earlier on, not so much later on, but more earlier on, there was a little bit of stiffness. Um, and I just think the story is a little bit more dull and not as engaging in places. The miniseries had a lot of build up in its first 2 episodes, but there was at least some engaging elements in both of those. But this one doesn't have as much of an engagement for me. I found it not so much engaging, and that's not even taking um, the depiction of Indians and all that into account. That's not even taking that into account. So I don't think this one is the better version of the story. I think I think it's on the same level as the miniseries. The miniseries' last episode I gave an 8 out of 10, but the other two are 7. So I think I might give the miniseries the slight edge over the film. That's mainly due to the character work for most of the characters. But at the same time, I feel like there's a version of the story that's going to combine the best of both these two versions and make the best version. But we haven't had that yet. We haven't had anything that combines the best of the 1947 film or the 2020 miniseries and combines them into the best possible adaptation. Unless the radio version does that, if there is a radio version. Same for the book, if it did that. So that's Black Narcissus. I'm not entirely impressed, but there was plenty of good stuff in here as well, just like with the miniseries. But I'm going to give the miniseries a slight edge for some better character depictions, and it just flowed a bit better for me. So that's it from my review of the 1947 version of Black Narcissus. Please check out my reviews of the 2020 version and its ranking, and I shall see you guys next time for a new set of films that I will be watching for the multiplexed contemporary popular cinema module in my university course, starting with the 1975 blockbuster classic Jaws. And also, some of these films have a couple of sequels and other films in those franchises, like Jaws. So I might check out some of the other ones in part of those franchises as well to talk about those. That even though they're not part, even though only one film will be part of the module, I might talk about some of the other films. So I might also talk about the other Jaws films as well. But the first one is the priority because that's part of the course. But the other three are out of general interest, but I might check those ones out as well later on. So anyway, that's it from me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. don't forget to click below to subscribe to the Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel.